Good evening and welcome to I'm Listening, Stay Connected. I'm Listening is a 24/7, 365 initiative. We've got a great show planned for you. We've got Dr. Ursula Whiteside. We'll be talking about suicide prevention and the numbers rising, and also DJ and producer Pluko. If you have questions and you want to be a participant in the show, you can send them to us on our Loveline DM page. Slide on into those DMs with your question, or by tweeting them with the hashtag I'm Listening, and we'll be answering those throughout the show and also throughout the week. If you want to check out old episodes of I'm Listening, Stay Connected, you can always do so on all the radio.com handles. We've had some awesome guests and experts, so please go back, check them out, share them, post them, tag yourself. We got a lot to talk about tonight as well. Let's start with the fact that our American obsession with individualism is really kind of setting us back. We are still in a pandemic. And I've been asking everyone in terms of dating and sex as well, but also in mental health in the pandemic, that we focus on more care and compassion towards those around us. You know, this show's about mental health, and we want you to know that we want to be talking about mental health, recognizing what mental health looks like. One of the number one ways we can assess mental health is how we take responsibility for the way we impact others. Every decision you're making right now is impacting those around you. So ask yourselves, in service of building up some more mental wellness and health, am I being empathetic? Am I considering all the social impact I have on others based on what I'm doing right now? Just driving into the studio tonight, it looks like the pandemic's over. People are running around without masks, picking fights with people. We've all seen the memes and things going viral. So I want to remind us all that we are not out of the woods yet. Everything you do does show your mental health. So please take care and compassion seriously. One of the more interesting stories that I saw pop up was the one about men being the least likely to want to wear masks because they don't, and I quote, look cool or manly. We all are collectively shaking our heads in the studio about that one. There's nothing more manly than caring about others, worrying about those around you, and coolness. Come on, y'all. I think I look pretty cool in my mask. Anyway, let's go now to our next guest, Pluko, electronic DJ and producer. How are you? Welcome to the show.
How you doing, man?
Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I'd love to check in on your mental health. How is yours right now?
It's pretty good. Yeah, it was towards the beginning of all of this stuff. I mean, I'm sure along with most of everyone, it was kind of a little all over the place. But I've started to kind of get a schedule and everything, and just get like a nice routine and keep my head focused, and just stay in the zone and try to just stay healthy with everything. And yeah, what about you?
Mine's pretty good. I'm kind of doing what you're doing, which is it's that routine piece. Otherwise, it's a matter of, what day is it? What time is it? Even what month is it sometimes? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, the routine is so important.
So you are a small town PA guy. I'm from PA as well. Yeah. I always get excited when I see another Pennsylvanian.
Oh yeah? Where were you from?
Right outside Philadelphia in the Westchester, Westtown area.
Okay. And where are you now?
Los Angeles.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So looking at your bio, I saw that, your time in Pennsylvania was difficult, small town. A lot of people didn't necessarily understand music or artistry. And you talked a little bit about getting bullied for being different. How did you cope with that?
I mean, it was really interesting. I mean, now, like, literally the people that would make jokes about like what I was doing. I mean, I like to think that I don't like to have any enemies really. So like I'm on good terms with all those people now, but it's just back then it was just pretty frustrating. I mean, it was like I was just doing what I wanted to do and what I was interested in. And yeah, I mean, the music wasn't the best at the beginning, but I mean, people were pretty harsh just for me doing something that not everyone else was doing. It was very interesting. And I guess how I dealt with it was just like, screw you guys, I'm just going to prove you wrong. It was just like, I'm going to keep doing this because I want to do it. And I don't really care like what anyone thinks, And yeah, I mean, that was kind of the mentality that I didn't like to dwell on it very much. I mean, yeah, sure, it was frustrating, but I mean, it was probably it probably lasted less than a year, because all I wanted to do was just be like, okay, like, you guys, there's no way you can say that you don't like this music. I had to kind of prove them wrong.
I love the confidence in that. You guys, there's no way you can say you don't love my music.
Yeah. I mean, like the music that I was making at the time that I was being made fun of for was awful. But like if someone comes up to me and like shows me what they're doing and they're so excited about it and I personally don't think it's the best, I'm not going to say that to them and make fun of them for it. You know, you want to like support them and bring them up and tell them to keep going and keep getting better. And yeah, there's like people just handle things with negativity just based on like insecurities and stuff, and it's hard to deal with, but you just have to like keep your head straight and just understand that those people like have nothing to do with what you want to do, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I say this to nauseum. I just want us to have more of an ethic grounded in compassion. Like, support people doing the things that make them happy and they love. And I personally love celebrating people's success, because when I hear someone making a career out of what they like to do, like, that's beautiful to me. That inspires me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And even like, yeah, like it doesn't matter even if you don't understand it or don't agree with it or don't like whatever they're doing. If they're happy doing it, then that's all that matters. Who are you to judge that, you know?
Yeah. And you talked in one of the interviews about the fact that, and I thought this was a beautiful understanding of human nature, that we as humans tend to be afraid of anything that's a little different or out of the ordinary. And yet a lot of creativity is found in the non-ordinary. Like, I think that's where beauty actually lies. How much
Absolutely.
Tell us more. How much has that inspired your work?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been about kind of getting outside of my comfort zone and putting myself in positions that I wouldn't typically want to be in, but I know that at the end of the day, they're going to be good for me, you know? So like, I mean, I was terrified to do shows, and I still like every time I book a show, I'm like, oh man, I'm really going to have to like be in front of a crowd and like have to do that again. And it's nerve wracking, but it's really good to just keep pushing myself and keep like, even if it's a new city that I've never played in or whatever it is, it's always that's an example of just like it always kind of pushing that boundary always feels really good and like breaking through that. And once I do the show, I'm like, that was great. Like, I'm so glad I did that. And it's just this big relief. And it's the same thing with like so many things, like the first time I ever flew by myself, and like the first time that I mean, I moved to New York City at the beginning of this year. I had to move back because of all this stuff. But doing that was a really uncomfortable thing. And being in this huge city, living with like a bunch of 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And I'm like 19 and I just like very out of place, you know? But yeah, I find a lot of inspiration and just overall, I just find a lot of just like growth in when I'm uncomfortable and in places that I don't think that I would be comfortable in, you know?
Okay, that's a very, very evolved, mature perspective that I work with clients for decades to come to see like the transformative capacity of difficult moments. So where do you get so much resilience? Because as you said, you're 19 and you vulnerably put your music out there and you perform and you move to New York City, which is a very intense city to relocate to. So where's that resilience come from?
I mean, I just like, I don't like to think about things too much. And I mean, I definitely overthink a lot of things, especially creatively. But as far as like decision making goes and like willingness to, I'm down to do like anything, you know, I'm down to go anywhere. I'm down to, and I guess that's just like how I was raised or how I was born or whatever. That's just kind of like my mindset. I'm always trying to like better myself and like learn more and do more. And I just think I just want to be like 80 years old and look back and think that I did like absolutely everything that I could possibly do and like not have any regrets. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at everything you're doing. I think you're going to get there. I think you might even get there in your 30s. You might not have to wait till you're 80. Let's talk about something else you're doing, because again, you got a lot on your plate. Splendid Society. It's essentially, I guess, a collective and a clothing line. And I loved one of the taglines. It said it's a brand for good people doing good things. That is stunning. Where does that come from?
I don't know. That's just kind of like the mindset. I mean, that's my mindset for a lot of things. And that's, I mean, I do the Splendid Society stuff, like the clothing, with my two friends from my hometown. And we're all kind of on the same page creatively and with that whole kind of like vibe about just like positive things and just spreading positivity and all of that. And so we all just kind of came to that like theme, you know, for the whole purpose of the brand and everything. And just, we don't want it to be like an obnoxious, like streetwear brand type vibe. We just want it to be a brand for just kind of everybody, you know? And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, I guess. Just positive vibes. That's pretty much my motto for sure.
All right. Well, we have some questions that came in that I want you to answer with us. But before we get to that, on top of the clothing line and the music and the producing and all that, you're also running marathons?
Well, not a full marathon, half
Okay.
marathon. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's hard to get me to run around my neighborhood, so I'm still impressed with a half marathon.
Well, honestly, I haven't been. I was supposed to run a full marathon like tomorrow, actually, but I mean, obviously, all of those things were canceled, and so I like stopped running when all this pandemic stuff started, and so now I'm only running like 4 or 5 miles for my runs, but like I'm supposed to be running like 26 miles tomorrow if none of this stuff would have happened. Obviously, that's not happening, but I will get that full marathon mark either by the end of this year or next year. I need to do it as soon as I can and as soon as it's safe to, you know.
Yeah, well said. You got to get that safety piece in there, man. You're blowing my mind with all you're doing. The bar's high. The bar's high. So, like I said, some questions came in from fans that I'd love for you to answer with us. This
Awesome.
first one asks, "What's the story behind your name?" That's a good one. I had that same question myself.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. So my original name was Pluto, like the planet, and so that was my name for a while. And literally the only reason why I liked that name was the way it looked and the way it sounded. So it had nothing to do with like space or anything like that. And so I had a song or two that started to do really well and started to get a lot of attention. And with that, we had no like copyright or trademark for Pluto. And so we were like, Disney owns all of this, the rights to this on the music side and the entertainment side. And so we were kind of forced to change it. And so I thought about it for literally 2 months. It was driving me absolutely nuts. I had all these dumb names that I was trying to come up with. And then I was like, okay, the only reason I came up with Pluto is because I liked how it looked and I liked how it sounded. And if I just change one letter, it's going to look and sound pretty much the same way. So that's kind of how that happened.
Easy transition over from the T to the K. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
And it's actually, it really worked out because now when you Google Pluko, I come up instead of like when you would Google Pluto, it was the planet, you know?
That's a lot of competition in an entire planet. So
Oh,
I feel
yeah,
ya.
yeah.
I feel ya.
I still wouldn't be showing up.
The next question asks, how did you get into producing and how did you blow up so fast?
Well, I got into producing just because I was a fan. You know, I was really into. I've always been really into music. I was really into hip hop for a while, but then I started to get into like the whole Skrillex stuff, and then like the Martin Garrix stuff, and then once I found like SoundCloud and like all of like the stuff that was going on with trap and future bass, that's when I really wanted to go try it myself. And I started by making just like house music and like Martin Garrix stuff, and then while I was doing that, I found all the cool future bass stuff and then tried making that. And then I just like became obsessed with it. I'm like a super obsessive person. And so as soon as I get into something, I want to be as great as I possibly can be and learn as much as I possibly can and talk to as many people. Like I met so many like friends through SoundCloud and that I would learn from, and we'd work together and share projects, and I'd see how they would do things and share ideas, you know, and really just trying to absorb as much as possible. And as far as like the blowing up thing, I mean, that didn't happen for like two years probably after I started. I didn't really like, I was putting out music and making music for 2 years, and I'd be lucky if I got 2,000 streams, you know? But the thing that really set my music off was when Trap Nation posted one of my songs. I would always submit my songs to them, and finally they liked one of them. And then also that was at the same time that SoundCloud was like, if you would get a repost on SoundCloud, it was like a game changer. So there was a lot of like people reposting like friends' tracks and doing favors for people, and just it's such a great community of just like positive people and everybody's helping each other out. So I credit a lot of the energy at the beginning first to Trap Nation and then also to like SoundCloud and the reposting.
So
stuff.
hard work. I mean, that's what's so funny when people talk about someone blowing up is the answer is usually what you said. Didn't happen overnight. I've been behind the scenes working my butt off, you know, doing the labor, which I like that message though, is that, you know, don't accept failure if it doesn't happen right away. Sometimes the more successful careers, they take time. And I think that there can be a beauty in that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We have one final question. This one asks, what was the hardest part about touring and playing the shows for you? And did it impact your mental health at all?
I'd say the hardest part about touring is just like not being home and just not being like very comfortable. Which I mean, I've talked about how not being comfortable is a good thing, but at the same time, it's also not like it's not the most fun, especially when it's like getting on a plane all the time. And a lot of times, one of the biggest things is like my diet completely changes when I'm on tour because I like wake up and my flight's usually before like 9 o'clock, so I got to wake up at like 5:30, and I don't like to eat breakfast that early, so I don't eat at all. And then I get on the plane and I don't eat until I land, which is like 5 hours later. So I don't eat until like 5 o'clock every day.
Pluko, you
Uh,
got to bring a little snack pack. Come on, buddy. I'm going to worry
I
about
know,
you.
I know. It's so bad. And then what else? I mean, honestly, like the diet thing is probably the thing that messes me up the most. And also, I'm usually by myself or I'm not with any of my like loved ones or friends or anything. So I'm always like on my phone and my screen time goes up so much because I'm always chatting with everybody that's back home and stuff. So that's another thing that is the result of being on tour. I'm always kind of locked in on my phone a little more, which is never good.
Yeah, it's not great for the mental health. Pluko, thank you
Yeah.
so much for being part of the show and for all your vulnerability and good stuff with the clothing line. I'm glad you're putting out that message of compassion.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, have a great night.
You too. Appreciate it. See ya.
Be well. I love that. Anyone whose mission is to not only just keep doing what authentically they're drawn to, so powerful, so important. It's also part of the mental health journey, right? Is we got to find meaning and purpose in our lives. And it's not always going to be simple. It's not always going to be handed to us, but it pays off when you dig your heels in and stick around. Interesting stuff going on in the news. We talked about men being the lower users of the masks, and we got to do better about that. Well, every time something happens in our culture, it translates into love, sex, and dating. We got something now called park dates. People, it's a harm reduction model. People are following the rules mostly. And some individuals are really, really, really struggling because they're in a relationship with a loved one or because they've connected over technology. So people are starting to do park dates, which is a lower level of risk, still not 100% safe. But as we talked about on some earlier shows, keeping distance, washing your hands, wearing your masks, not going into enclosed spaces and avoiding crowds is the best we can do. And guess what? That's what they're doing. So there's a lot of different websites, kind of adorable, talking about all the different cute ways to do a park date. And I got to see some of the photos, people in their little masks sitting far apart, longingly looking into each other's eyes. You got to do what you got to do right now. Also, many cities are shutting down some of the streets to allow more walkers and biking. I love that. Again, as long as we are social distancing, because it's good for our mental health to go outside. So I like that the cities are kind of pushing back on some of the cars. There's an increase in bike purchasing. I didn't get to get a bike. Now it's a little too late. So, it'll happen at some point. All right. Now we're going to be talking with Dr. Ursula Whiteside, licensed psychologist and CEO of NowMattersNow.org. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Hi. Good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. How are you doing through all this? How's your mental health? What kind of self-care are you up to?
I think it's I think for all of us it's a super transition. I mean, stating the obvious. I think I think of it as a real growth time, so something to sort of get back on my sleep schedule and try and I don't know, deepen those connections that I have with my friends and family that maybe I haven't been paying as much attention to. So I spent a lot of time this weekend with my family. I'm in Seattle, they're in Minnesota, just doing a video call, and we haven't done that in a while. So more reason.
Yeah. I'm thankful for the technology we have. It's keeping us connected. But more importantly, I'm here in LA. It's warming up. I love Seattle weather, which shocks some people, but I'm jealous.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not alone. I mean, I like Seattle weather too. But once in a while, I wouldn't mind LA weather.
A little sun doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
So I read a stat, and this was off of the NowMattersNow.org site, and it was really shocking to hear that 10 million adult Americans seriously consider suicide each year. Far too high. Unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah, they did this survey where they asked a big group of people how, whether or not they'd had suicidal thoughts. So, and then estimated to the larger population. So we know that there are probably far more than 10 million adult Americans because only a certain subset of people or a certain group of people are willing to tell a stranger that they've had suicidal thoughts. So it's a lot of people, but I think what I find hopeful in that are two things. One, that the vast majority of people who are having suicidal thoughts are not going on to kill themselves, because we know the suicide rate is closer to 48,000 people per year, which is way too many, but it's nowhere near 10 million. And I guess also just that in that, like, we're not alone, that this is like part of the human experience. And I think for a long time we've treated it as sort of this like strange or unusual thing. But as we learn more, it's common, and it's maybe better looked at as an indication of suffering or of going through hard times, rather than some really strange abnormality or some kind of illness that needs to be, where someone needs to go to the hospital and stay in the hospital. We're finding that actually probably isn't the most useful thing for people who are having suicidal thoughts, at least for the most part.
So it's a really profound thing that you just said. A lot of people that work in the suicide field kind of sound the alarm right away. And so it was interesting to kind of look at your website, and it gave me a sense of what I'm trying to do with this show, which is I'm trying to get people more familiar hearing people talk about mental health, so people feel more comfortable sharing and discussing, so as to help them with resources and whatnot. So let's circle back to what you said in reference to suicide as well as just normalizing mental health. How do we both take someone discussing suicide seriously while also trying to hold the space and not panic, so that they will continue to share that with us and we feel safe to them?
Yeah, I think it is really about, if somebody's telling me this, that means that we have a real relationship, that they trust me. And what people who've been suicidal want, because I have a whole team of people who inform my work, what they want is for someone to be present, not panic, and sit with them. Like, for the most part, they don't want to go to the hospital. That's not what's going to be most helpful for them. And oftentimes people's intensity of suicidality or suicidal thoughts will come down pretty quick when they feel connected and sort of, I guess, feel connected again, feel less alone. And the way that we do that is by not panicking, by showing that we're paying attention and showing that we can hang. And to do that in our own heads, that's reminding ourselves this is part of the human experience. People go through hard times, and I can be useful by, listening and not panicking.
And I think that that's hard, because I know a lot of people, when someone comes to them to say, I'm anxious or I'm depressed or I'm sad, a lot of us have that natural instinct. We need to fix it. We need to solve it. And you're kind of saying what I tend to say, which is maybe just be present and listen and just allow them to share.
Absolutely. Like, our brains really don't want other people to be in pain, or we just haven't spent a lot of time talking about emotions, so we get really uncomfortable. I think we need to do our own work to be aware that that's normal, to want to fix things or to get anxious, and then to come back to this moment and be with this person who's been willing to share like this thing that isn't easy necessarily to talk about.
And let's talk a little bit about resilience. I was on a panel last week, and that was what I was asked to speak on. And I hit two approaches where I said, we can talk about resilience so that individuals can try to build theirs. But then I also said, I want to also talk, and your work does this as well, about some of the larger social justice or social elements that force people to need resilience, which is where I think we need to best target things. Talk to us about that in reference to suicide.
Well, people come to suicidal experiences, for good reason, right? And oftentimes that's after a series of experiences that, broadly classified are injustice. And if you walk through the world you walk through a world that's constantly interacting with you in a way that is different from the majority, or that is sort of treating you different in some way, that's going to have an effect over time, independent of whether you have a mental health history or a genetic history, that it's in your family. Just being treated as other, or not having the same resources, what happens over time is it increases your level of stress. And as our stress increases, and if we have that higher level over time, we're more vulnerable. So when a normal thing, like a normal stressful thing, happens to someone who lives in an unjust environment, their response is going to appear bigger, because they're already up higher than the rest of us, like on our day-to-day basis. I'm not sure if I'm being real clear here.
100%.
Yeah.
We're not all entering a struggle from the same level of support or care from community or loved ones. And I think immediately of, the LGBTQIA community where, if you lose a loved one or you become unemployed, it's different if you also are experiencing consistent transphobia or homophobia in the world, and that might escalate what you think your choices are.
Right, absolutely. It's like you're just going to be more raw by nature. And it's unfortunate that, you have to be in this situation in the first place, but some of the most powerful people come out of that because they have to figure out a way to survive. And that's one of the reasons that the nowmattersnow.org website exists, because it offers some of the tools that are in, really expensive mental health treatments for anyone to use. And these are coping skills from a treatment called dialectical behavior therapy. Basically, it's just people who've used these coping skills talking about how they use them in their own life, and then videos of like what those coping skills are. And we're finding that people who visit the website have fewer suicidal thoughts in 10 minutes or less. So there is this element of storytelling as well of, I've been here, here's my experience. I don't know if it'll be helpful to you, but this is how I got through it.
Beautiful. We have some questions that came in that I'd love you to answer with me. But before I say that, I want to just support what you said about this site as well. I spent some time on it, and I actually think it offers resources for all of us because we all have the possibility of having some of the same struggles. We're all kind of in this together. And the mindfulness, the DBT coping skills, that is something that we could all benefit from. So I think everyone could learn something from that site. Okay, these questions that came in asked. The first one, I've heard a close friend say several times out loud, sometimes I get the urge to take my life, but could never go and actually do it. Is this a high cause for concern?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, and in the sense that somebody's saying, I'm in a lot of pain and I'm sharing that with you, that's the translation, is like, this is really hard. Sometimes I don't want to do it. And they're sharing that with you. Does that mean they're going to kill themselves? Does that mean they're at higher risk? Well, whenever someone talks about suicide, that does increase their risk. At the same time, the vast majority who talk about having suicidal thoughts will not go on to kill themselves. So I think, it comes back to that. Yes, take that very seriously, that the person's level of, distress or pain is high, and they're giving you a unique opportunity to help just by being there.
Yeah, I like that. There's that piece of hope in there. The fact that they're sharing that and expressing that to you means that there is some room for maybe some involvement. We have one final question. This one asks, are there early signs to tell if someone's at risk? If it's the ones you expect, if it's the ones you least expect, then how can a person tell if someone's masking their pain and suffering?
Yeah, I hear a lot of times like, I never saw that coming. That's the last person in the world. But then there's also the people who had, struggled for a long time, and many people knew about it. So there's not just one type of person who kills themselves, and there's not just one indicator. In fact, what we realized over the past 60 years of doing research in suicide is that it's incredibly difficult to predict. And we put a lot of time and effort into figuring out how to do that. And there's not just one way of doing that. But if I were to if I were worried about my kid, developing suicidality because there was a family history, I think early on I would be developing good sleep habits, is one of the main things that I would do. And this regularity in schedule, so that their brains are trained from an early age to have this be part of who they are and how they operate in the world.
Beautiful. Dr. Ursula Whiteside, thank you so much for your time and for everything you're doing. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Have a beautiful night. Yeah, we talk a lot about mental health, and resilience is an important part of that. And what's interesting is the same ways that we're going to get through this self-isolation, the pandemic, are also the same qualities that we want so that our mental health can be at its best. And often that's connection. And right now we are being given the opportunity to really strengthen and make some of those. And then we can take that with us out of this pandemic. I think that could be what some people find most valuable about this time, like we've talked about before, is reconnecting, renewing, going deeper, but maintain those connections. That's very preventative and also helps us build resilience, as well as meaning and purpose. It often is what helps us get through the days, especially when we're at our worst and they're the most difficult. You can always send your questions to us by sliding into the Loveline DMs or by tweeting them at the hashtag I'm listening. Tomorrow's show, we got singer-songwriter JoJo. I have loved this girl's music for well over a decade or two. So definitely join us to hear what she's been up to. Our show tomorrow, we'll be back 5 p.m. Pacific. That's 8 p.m. Eastern. And as always, you can check out the show and prior episodes on all the radio.com handles. And at the end of the show here, we're going to be putting up some resources for those that feel like they need some extra care or support. Thanks as always for hanging out with me, and you all have an awesome, awesome night.